Hey everyone, welcome to ISO 400. There are times when you meet a photographer and you think this person gets it. And the photographer I'm talking to this week, David Carroll, is someone who gets it. He lives and breathes photography and has given back to the industry in many ways. He's the author of 3 photo books. He's given presentations, portfolio reviews, and workshops. He's written about photographers for various publications and served on the juries for competitions. And just recently, he's become a publisher in his own right, having started Peanut Press Books with Ashley Stoll, who I interviewed for a previous episode. Suffice it to say, with 35 years in the industry, he has a wealth of experience, stories, and wisdom. And we had a great conversation, and I think you'll enjoy it. So, as always, our music is provided by Yuki Futami, a New York-based jazz musician. Thanks so much, and hope you enjoy. In doing the research for this interview, I've learned a number of things. You have several books to your name. You've been an educator. You've been a photographer for several decades now.
Oh my God, I'm so old.
Yeah, and just
But
recently,
I'm spry.
you are spry.
Mm.
And just recently, a publisher, and you also have your photographs in the permanent collections of several museums and galleries.
Good ones.
Yes, and I had read in an interview, I think a couple of years back, that, and it seemed kind of revelatory in the context of the interview, but that now that you have these photos in these collections, you had said that you've kind of let go of that, and that you said it doesn't matter to you anymore. And I'm curious, when did you, or how did you learn to let go of that?
Okay, so the deal in museums. Well, let me say this. When I was in art school, I'm not going to look into the green light. I'm going to look around. When I was in art school, it was a different time, right? It wasn't like social media. It wasn't like there was a way to be exposed. There were no famous photographers. There's still none. But everybody knows Ansel Adams. So that's the one famous photographer, Ansel Adams. There's Annie Leibovitz, but, she doesn't matter. If her subjects weren't famous, you wouldn't know who Annie Leibovitz is. So, and that's just my opinion. But everybody thinks she's super nice. Nobody thinks that. Okay. So here's my deal. So I started out in art school in like 1980, 81.
SVA, right?
School of Visual Arts, yeah. I actually wanted to go to art school, but I didn't know how to do anything. I could kind of draw, but then I figured my way in would be to do photography because I could learn how to use a camera.
Right.
And literally that was the deal. My friend got a camera and I went out and bought one and said, and my other buddy was in art school. He was an illustrator and he was good.
Yeah.
Of course, now he owns a kung fu school, so go figure.
Really?
But yeah, and one of the top 10 in the country. One of my kids was in him 3.5 years. He did it.
Whoa.
It's called 10 Tigers Kung Fu Academy, and it's
10
in
Tigers Kung Fu.
Huntington, New York. Look, I'm promoting Rick. How good is that? So anyway, he's at SVA, so I got a camera. I learned sort of how to take pictures. I sucked. I was interviewed to go to SVA, and they said, "What kind of photography do you want to do?" And the truth is, I had no idea what that even meant. So I said fashion because I knew that was a kind of photography.
Right.
And they said, "Oh, great! We don't get many of those here." And I think that got me into SVA. I actually have done some fashion, but I don't know what fashion is. I don't know how to look at things like that. So anyway, so I went to SVA. What was the question? Where am I going with this? The museum thing.
Right.
Okay, so the whole deal at SVA was the only new people we knew about was like Winogrand and Friedlander,
Right.
and, all the way back. And I love the history of photography. I've read about it all the time. I collect books. So I love the history of everything, even back to like John Thompson in South Asia in the late 19th century, like all that. I love that. And the only place we could see photos was in galleries and museums because there was no online or by books. So I thought, I want to be in museums. I mean, really, that was the goal. Make books and be in museums. Books and museums. It's the books, I think, are the best way to look at photos. You lay on your couch like I am now. Or you go to a museum. Shows I didn't like so much because, if you didn't get in the day, the show wasn't like if you went to the opening, you couldn't see anything, and then you only had like 3 weeks.
Right.
Although I will say I saw a Winogrand show probably around 1980, and it was 3 levels of photographs.
Whoa.
Every wall was covered. I think there were 300 photographs there, and the prints were like $300 each. How crazy is that, right, Winogrand?
Did you
and
buy
by
any?
the way, not from that show, but I have bought plenty of Friedlanders, Winogrands, Kudelkas for $300 or $400 each, and everybody should be jealous because it was and I never bought anything because I thought it was an investment. Because honestly, in the '80s, nobody thought anything would blow up. Even the books we bought, nobody thought would have value. Anyway, so I wanted to be in museums because museums seemed important. And
Right.
books seemed important, so that was the two places you want to be, in books and museums.
Hmm.
So, and how did I get over it? Well, it's a weird thing getting into museums. It's not like the fantasy I would have imagined at 18. Like you get a phone call from Sarkowski going, "We love your work and we need it in the museum."
Right.
It's really, at least for me, it's not like that. It never has been. It's been more like a gallery would say, "Oh, we can place you in this museum. They'll buy one, you give them two." This
Right.
sort of thing. I don't know if you're not supposed to talk about this, but this is how it's worked for me.
All right.
Although I will say this, Ann Tucker, who ran the Museum of Fine Art Houston, she's
Right.
like, I don't know, is she the most important curator? She's top 2 or 3. She wrote the intro to my first book.
Was that Where's the
and-
Monkey?
No, that's 40 Miles of Bed
40
Road.
Miles of Bed Road. Sorry.
Yeah. So all my titles, I don't know my own titles. At the end of the day, my titles are supposed to be funny, like they're irrelevant,
All
or
right.
maybe they're not.
Oh, who knows?
I had a book called All My Lies Are True, and for a while I kept telling everybody it was about golf. Like you had to hit it the way it laid. And people go, "Oh, really?" I'm going, "No." There is a real reason why I came up with that title, but anyway. So Ann Tucker had me pay her. I'm trying to do quotes. Hold on. Pay her for writing the thing for the book by giving 14 photos to the museum. And I'm like, "Fuck, really?" I mean, it's a whole story about how I got to talk to her and everything.
Sure.
I guess now's when I'm supposed to tell that stuff.
If you like.
I don't care. I've said it a million times. So anyway, Anne did that, and I paid the museum with photographs. So like that's one way to get in a museum.
All right.
But anyway, I thought museums are cool. And then at one point, this is what I noticed.
Okay.
I stopped keeping notes of what museums I was in. And like Dater, for example, Stephen Dater Gallery I think I got pictures in the museum at Northwestern, and I'm forgetting the name right now. But I noticed when I got the letter, I didn't save it, and I started going, "What? Why don't I care about this?" I do care.
No, of
but
course.
It started to not be as relevant, and it's sort of like, okay, I don't have to be defined. Oh, you know what? Like a profound moment was when I realized, really, it was one person that just happened to have a really cool job at a museum, deciding they liked some of my pictures, and that's awesome. But maybe it sort of almost became like, well, it's sort of like anybody. I get they have connoisseurship and knowledge and all this, but at the end of the day, it's one person saying they want it. And once I had a list with 5 or 6 museums, who cares if it has 30? And if the list has 30, because I don't even use a resume. My resume is my email.
Right.
You want it. I mean, seriously, like at this point, if I'm running around with resumes, really, people ask for bios, but this cavalier attitude of mine, or as it's coming across, has really always been the same. I just want to take pictures, and the rest of the stuff is awesome,
Right.
and I love the attention. I mean, what's wrong with attention?
No, of course.
But it has nothing to do with motivation or.
Right.
Yeah, it really doesn't. So,
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
You did. You did. And to go back to when you said that when you were starting with photography, you didn't really know, like what you were photographing, and you said fashion in the entry interview. I'm wondering, was there in the...
Well, I had to have an answer why I wanted to go to school.
Well, right. No, of course.
Yeah.
But in the context of like the early part of your career, was there a particular image or a series of images where you kind of realized this is my style, this is what I like to photograph?
Okay, so there's a million ways to answer that, but I'll say this.
Okay.
The first photographers that I saw where I went, oh, this makes sense, this is something I'd like to photograph like, was almost like I didn't even understand there was a kind of photography other than National Geographic or Life. I don't think I was exposed to really anything. And not that I shoot like Les Crims, but Les Crims and Elliot Erwitt.
Right.
And then later on, a lot of other people, because then once I got into school, I started learning everything in the history of photography classes. But Les Crims took these weird pictures of his mom making chicken soup, and then he did a series called Little People of America, and just like real life stuff that was odd, which, my whole life felt odd, so that made sense.
Right.
And then Elliot Erwitt was funny.
Yeah.
So like those two guys sort of said to me, like God's talking to me.
Right.
You can take a picture of anything if you think it's interesting. And I don't know if that sounds profound, but it was for me.
Oh, right.
It's like, wow, I could point my camera. And I say to people now when I do my thing, I say, just take pictures for yourself. And the reason is, find what you think is interesting. And if someone else gives a shit about your pictures, that's just gravy. But as long as you're taking pictures for yourself, you've won, right? I mean, I could shoot jobs for people, and I have for the last 35 years. I don't look back at that shit. I don't care about that stuff. I mean, I care in the moment. I want to give them what they want. Right. I'm a professional. I want it to be great. But I look at pictures now from SVA days, and it's cool. I don't care about the commercial work.
Yeah.
So that's maybe my answer.
It is, I think.
Okay,
and
good.
Is that the shooting for yourself thing? Is that something you've had since the beginning? Is it something you kind of learned along the way?
Well, the idea of shooting for myself is all I have. that's my thing with photography. The other stuff really is, it's like you could say you fell into the commercial end of photography, but I didn't know any other way to make a living.
Right.
Since I was about 22 or 23, I haven't had another job that wasn't photo related. I mean, I guess you could say I've run businesses and
Sure.
speaking. But it's collateral to photography. It's all based on me talking about photography or what I think about photography.
Yeah.
When I was 25, nobody gave a shit what I thought about photography, and it seems like the last 10 or 15 years, people actually sometimes pay me money to hear what I think about photography, which is completely insane to me because I sort of am the same.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it was always just about taking pictures. I mean, I think the better photographers, and I'm not including myself in that, I'm just saying
Sure.
the better photographers are taking pictures as they wanted to. There's no way that Robert Frank was shooting the Americans or well, maybe Lewis Hine was, shooting for a cause. But the pictures those kind of people were taking was because they wanted to take the pictures,
Right.
There would be no other motive. I can't imagine Ansel Adams was taking pictures. Well, I don't know. But that's what I think. I think the best photographers shoot for themselves. Gary Winogrand was taking those pictures because he wanted to see them.
Right.
And the fact that other people cared was just like, hey, that's awesome.
And he didn't even look at him immediately. I mean, he let him sit.
Oh my God, that's what, 10,000 rolls after he died? I mean,
right. Wasn't there that recent exhibition like a year or two ago?
Yeah, I didn't go see that.
I
have the book. It's still sealed in plastic, and I didn't go. It's very simple why. I think Gary Winogrand's a genius.
Yeah,
and if I look at his pictures, I start
shooting.
Can't get him out of my head. And I don't want to be humming somebody else's song, write a song. Like when George Harrison got nailed on a song, he goes, hey, I didn't know it. I don't want my pictures start looking like tilted Gary Winogrand pictures. And it will happen if I go to a show of his work. Yeah. So I have to opt out of seeing that show.
Got it. And in having, since I've gotten to know you and having seen your photographs, is a definite...
Real hair, folks.
Real hair. Mine too.
You're young.
It's true. But there's a definite, or at least in my view of them, there's a certain humor to a lot of your images. The one that I'm thinking of is the one that was quite popular. The one of the guy from behind, and he's got like this inflated head that says "Who cares" on it.
That's a new one.
Right. No, it is a new one. And have you had an eye for that since the beginning? Like these like kind of weird, absurd little moments?
Conceited. And I'm going to fucking say it. I don't give a shit anymore. I've always found it easy to take pictures I wanted to take.
Mm-hmm.
And, call me a dick. I don't care. From the time I started taking pictures at SVA, once I learned how to use the camera.
Sure.
Because literally I didn't know how to use it. I didn't understand how my first darkroom class, everybody's in the room. If you've been in a darkroom in a school, the enlargers are all around. Yeah. And I opened mine with the light on to put my negative in. Everybody dove on their paper. And then I was like, oh, fuck, that's not good. That's how little I knew.
Right.
But, but since I started taking pictures, I think initially I felt like I was mimicking other people, like Friedlander or somebody who I thought, but I don't know. It's been always easy for me to get pictures that I like.
Sure.
And I only show pictures that I like. I take lots of shitty pictures. Or I take some pictures I think are pretty good, but they don't look like pictures I would take. So I don't show them to anybody. I have and everybody has this. It's not just me. Everybody has pictures they think are good, but I don't know what to do with them.
Right.
I only show a certain kind of picture to the world. Like the world's even paying attention. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course I know.
And who cares? Yeah, I saw that across the street. I was with my new partner, Ashley Stoll. Ashley Stoll and I, but let me preface this with, Ashley Stoll was a student of mine initially.
Really?
Yes, and that's how we met. And we were working together on the street, and we have certain rules. And one rule is, and it really is for everybody, is I can't take pictures while I'm on the street with them because the rap is I'm too fast, or I run ahead of them, or I see it before they do. So in that particular instance, I don't remember who saw it first. I'll say me.
Sure. And
then she went and took some pictures of it, and I said, "Are you done?" And she's like, "Yes." And then I went and took my picture. But yeah, that's like teeing the ball up and smacking it. You just have to make it in the proper context so that it isn't, you can't make it about his deliberateness.
Sure.
Of wearing that hat. You have to make it.
It was like a hat.
Somebody is what?
It was a hat. Like what was that thing on his head?
This is the weird part. I don't remember what the front was.
Huh.
I think it was like a hat. I don't know. But we saw it from across the street. It was down by where were we? We were by Union Square, I think.
Yeah.
And he was on the other side of the street, and he was like dancing and acting like he was showing. So I don't want a picture of that.
No, of course.
I don't want a picture of people like posing. Because even if he doesn't know I'm there, it's a pose. I just want to catch it in a regular thing. But yeah. So those kind of pictures have always been my interest, to find shit. I mean, my whole goal in life, when you're little and
Yeah.
you point at something, go look at that to like your mom or dad and go, what's that? That's cool. Look at that. That's all I'm doing. I'm looking for stuff and then going, look at that. I made some joke once that a friend of mine thought was good. What was it? I said, my job is to find shit and report back. And sort of as dumb as that's, like, I'm not looking to be a journalist. I'm not
Yeah,
looking
of
to
course.
change the world. When I started out, I thought, oh, I'll be a journalist. And I can't be around horror and I don't like it. I can't separate myself. I'd put my camera down and go do stuff to help, or I'd run away.
Right.
I have a friend, Ben Lowy, and he has this
Right.
picture of
Yeah.
a bomb going off.
Yeah.
And he goes, everybody's running towards me. He goes, notice I'm running towards the explosion. Yeah, that's not me. I'm not running towards the explosion. I want to hear about the explosion from a continent away, but I
Right.
don't want to be near it. So that's just my personality.
Right.
All right, let me see how many people I can mention as we do this.
And-
Amy Lombard.
Right. Just
right.
interviewed her.
Robert Larson.
Interviewed
name
him.
all the people that mentioned me. All right, so go ahead.
And what was the work you had worked for? It was called the Image Bank early on.
So the Image Bank.
What were you doing there?
There was a stock photo agency. So stock, it's now owned by Getty. So everybody knows what Getty is.
Of course.
Corvus Getty. So I was young. I'd come back from France, and I was looking for a job, and I was actually at the SVA darkrooms, same place I opened the Enlarger.
Very nice.
And ruined everybody's paper. And there was a woman there, and she goes, oh, the Image Bank is hiring. And I didn't know what the Image Bank was, but it's a big photo agency and stock photography. So I got over there, and they hired me. And my first job, and I was just talking to the woman whose father started the Image Bank, Lauren Wendell. She's now a VP at PDN. She does runs the shows like the Photo Plus and all that kind of thing. And so she was the librarian. Her dad started it. And my first job, not as a photographer, but in photography, was taking the slides that people sent in and writing a number on the bottom. And I would sit at a desk and number pictures for $5 an hour, day after day after day. And because I'm such a charming fool, I endeared myself to the higher-ups, and I got the job as the production manager, and I was having those people work for me. Nice.
Very nice.
Guys numbering slides. And then, but actually what I started doing was shooting events for them. Like when there'd be an event, and it was great because I'd meet Joe Meyerowitz. I'd meet all these cool photographers. Jay Maisel invited me down to his place.
Oh, awesome.
I'm like your age. I think I was 24, 25. And Jay's like, oh, you're good. Jay Maisel's like the nicest guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he took the picture of Miles on the cover of Kind of
That's
Blue.
right. Oh, my God.
So for that alone, how cool is that?
Yeah.
But anyway, Jay brought me down, and he lived in this bank, and he had a basketball court, and I was just like, wow, grown-ups are nice. And, I'd meet these people at the events, but I'd be photographing, like press shit, like, meet and greet. And then they decided they want to start having a staff photographer travel around the world and shoot stock that they would, like, sort of partially own, as opposed to having people spin it. And I was that first guy. I got a deal at, like, 26 to travel around the world. I mean, I signed, I think, a 2 or 3 year contract, whatever it was. And I basically was a kid who had nothing. I mean, I was fucking broke. I was poor. Yeah. And next thing you know, I'm on an expense account, flying on airplanes and staying in like real hotels, like nicer than any place I'd have ever lived. That was the point in my life where the hotels were much nicer than when I went home. Like the bathrooms were nicer, I had hot water. Yeah. There was it was a life transforming thing. Yeah. So that was my first gig with the Image Bank. And I also shot stock.
Right.
And at that point in my life, I started actually making a living. And that was nice. That was good. So,
yeah. And what in the course of those 2 to 3 years where you're traveling and staying in these places and photographing, what did you what were some of the biggest takeaways? What did you learn in that time before moving out? All right,
here's what I learned. Here's some basic things I learned. One, I learned, which now sounds almost impossible. I learned how to go someplace, whether it was the Arctic or Australia or the jungle in Mexico, whatever that is, with a couple hundred rolls of film and come back with something. Like the reality was you weren't processing your film in those places. There's no digital back. You're like, we need photographs of this stuff. We're paying a lot of money. Go there and you better come back with something. That's intense the first few times.
Yeah, of course.
And it never goes away, the fear of like, oh, I hope something's in here.
Yeah.
But you start to do that. And what I would do is, and this is where I think I did something right. In the beginning, I would shoot all this stuff for them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where I'm going. Let's just say I'm in Australia and I got to show the outback. It's all for advertising, right? So of course. Advertising shit. And then if I'm there for 10 days, I'm going to make sure I get everything done in the first 3 or 4, put it away and shoot for myself. So I'd get pictures all over. But what started happening was, it was this weird effect. I started only thinking about things commercially.
Huh.
Like, oh, that would be a beautiful like frame thing. I could see that on the cover of Travel and Leisure. And I started not picking up my own cameras anymore. And then I suddenly had this epiphany at 28 that I turned into a commercial photographer.
Huh.
And that's a great thing for a lot of people, but for me it was the antithesis of everything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And here's the problem. I was making money. Like money like I never thought of in my life. Some months I was making over 10 grand. And I'm 27 and I don't think I made 10 grand in a year. And I'm like, fuck. This is awesome, but this is not what I need to do. And I'd come back from Australia. It's funny I brought that up. I spent almost a month there and I didn't get one picture for myself.
Really?
And I got bummed. And I started realizing I haven't taken a picture of myself in a year or two. So what happened was we got a gig to go to Moscow. And it was to shoot spec for General Electric jet engines. They were going to sell them to Aeroflot. Nobody knew at the time Aeroflot didn't have 2 pennies. But me and my friend Joe went over there. And I consciously made a decision. I was going to shoot what they wanted as soon as I got there. Then I was going to put that shit away, take out my cameras, my Leicas, put in black and white film, and only shoot for myself. That was 91 or the first time was either 91 or 92. And I shot a ton of film. I shot 30 or 40 rolls in like 5 days. And when I got back, it was like the 50s.
Yeah.
Because that's what Moscow looked like in the early 90s.
Right.
And I loved everything. And then I went, oh my God, so this is it.
Yeah.
Shoot for myself with separate cameras, with separate film, black and white, and do the work, pay attention to that. So I stopped working for the image bank. I said I can't do both. I knew I could shoot color in my regular cameras,
Right.
my Nikons, and I knew to shoot black and white in my Leicas, and I found a way to separate it, but I had to leave image bank. It was just too much traveling, and I was thinking in the wrong way. So I took the hit financially, but I still had ways of making money.
Sure.
But I took the hit financially, and I focused more on my own stuff. And that was sort of my experience with image bank. They taught me how to be a professional. They taught me how to travel, like everything. The things we take for granted now, or a lot of people take for granted now. I mean, I'm in my 50s, so I don't know. But in your 20s, when you've never done this, it's like, how do you grease a concierge so that he's your best friend for the next 7 days? Like, that was a big thing to figure. I was in Mexico City at the Chapultepec, the Nico on the Chapultepec Park. And I'm like this, I don't know anything. I go up to the concierge and I gave him like $50 and said, can you help me during the week at cabs and all this stuff? This guy was my best friend for the rest of the week. And I was like, oh, it really does work like this. Like, he can get me the cab driver who understands the neighborhoods, or he can get me the person who, he would find the people for me. And that started becoming, you learned how to travel.
Right.
You know what I mean? You learned how to be a photographer because you can't do it on your own. You have to find out, like, when is the light at that end of the park? And, when that's coming, and all that stuff. So I learned a lot of that from Image Bank. I learned to get an American Express Platinum card because they upgrade you in hotels.
Very nice.
It's basically the same thing. If you travel 4 or 5 times a year, you get the card, and then instead, the standard room suddenly becomes the room with the ocean view.
Right.
These are the things you learn that, like, when you're just a poor kid, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. It's all collateral, but it makes your life easier.
Well, yeah, no, of course. And what was it about black and white that you realized worked for your personal stuff, and what's kept you with it all these years?
Yeah, so here's what's interesting. Somebody asked me this the other day, and I really don't ever think about that stuff. They asked me on one of my walks I just did. Said, why black and white? And I said, I think because when I started in art school, black and white was the cool thing.
Right.
And, all the cool photographers, did it. Except, this Harry Callahan and William Eggleston, they shot color. But everything cool was black and white. And I was kind of like, I read Kerouac and Burroughs and all these kind of books about, and I thought Europe was cool, like Paris in the 30s. So everything was sort of black and whitey and like that. And I think it's like music. The music you learn when you're young, like a teenager, and you listen to that for your whole life. Like, I was hanging at CBGBs all the time, and in my head, I'm still like, it's the Ramones, and it's like television.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that part of my life is where I learned my music thing that I liked. And then I think when you learn your first photography, it's the same thing. You go with the first thing. I never adapted to shooting color. I've tried. Color for myself.
Sure.
I mean, clearly I've shot color my whole life because that's how you make a living most of the time. But for myself, it never made sense. And I see all those, people coming out of Yale and all that stuff, shooting medium format color, whatever the trend or flavor of the year is. And like, by the way, street photography is trending now.
Oh, is it?
Oh, that's what I'm told. I actually have a student who said to me, it's so hard. Everybody's shooting street photography now and it's trending. And I said, it's not in my house. He's like, what do you mean? I said, I'm trending in my house. There's nothing trending. I don't understand what that means. But I mean, street photography is what we did because we went to school in the city.
Right.
You know what I mean? When I go outside of the city, I'd say 80% of my work is not street photography.
Right.
But I don't even know why I brought that because everybody thinks I'm a street photographer. But it's okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so I stuck with the black and white. And I also think most of the pictures I like tend to be black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the abstraction of, getting rid of the color. But I don't know. It just makes more sense. And all the photography I like is black and white. Although I have friends who I get color from, and I like their pictures. So, I don't know.
Like Amy Lombard.
That's all I know how to do. What?
Like Amy Lombard.
Amy is color.
She is.
Lots of my friends are color. Lori Nix is a great photographer. She shoots color.
Mm-hmm.
Rania Matar is a friend of mine. She shoots color.
Mm-hmm.
So I have friends that shoot color. Elliot Dudek is a friend of mine who shoots color. So I have to figure out how to hang that stuff up at my house because most of it's black and white. I'm looking around down here in my den. But yeah. So, okay, I know why. Black and white's better. No, I'm kidding. That's what and if film's better. Digital sucks and color sucks. No, all right, so go ahead.
But as far as like online arguments go or discussions or conversations, one of the things that for me has distinguished you is that your Facebook is like a real platform for discussion because, I mean, you use it to write these little letters, these missives, and you sign it thanks to management.
Oh, that was always that was like a joke, and then people think I'm like an asshole, like I think I'm the management. But I know you get it, but I always think it's funny when I get emails going, "What the you arrogant asshole? You're the management." I'm like, well, I am around these parts,
right?
I mean, what do you want from me?
When did
that was a joke.
No, well, of course,
and I keep doing it just because
I know, and it is. When did you start using Facebook as a platform for these thoughts of yours?
Okay, so I know the deal on that one very specifically.
Do you?
My second book was coming out in 2008, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to speak at the National Arts Club in New York City.
Uh-huh.
And I asked them, can we delay it? And I'll do a book signing too, because I have this book coming out.
Right.
And they said, fine. So I went to my cousin, who was in public relations. I said, how do I promote this thing? Oh, here's why. My printer, Chuck Kelton, had told me about a very famous photographer, I'm not going to say who it is, who had just done a talk there, and 30 people showed up. And I was like, oh my God, if he only got 30 people, how am I going to get anybody in here? This is scary. So I asked my cousin, she goes, you should try Facebook. And I genuinely was like, what is that? And I meant it. I really didn't know. So she told me how it worked. And then what I did was, and you can't do it anymore, was I joined Facebook and I started friending everybody who was on fan pages for Lee Friedlander and Gary Winogrand, and Robert
interesting.
Frank.
Okay.
I don't think you can do it anymore. I don't think you can see them in the same way you used to.
Right.
I started friending them all, but only ones that lived in the tri-state area.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to get them to your show.
Right. So I got 1,000 people in a week or 2 weeks. And so the extension of that is, and I realized I didn't realize if it had any value. And what I did was I started promoting that my book's limited edition. Mm-hmm. I was doing it pre-press to try to raise money. Yeah. I did this book myself. My first book I had not done myself, and I thought I knew how to do everything, and I did it my own way. And if I had 50 prints with books, I think I sold more than half of them in the first week via Facebook, and I went, ooh, we're on to something here.
Yeah.
And then I had my book signing at National Arts Club, and the room that I was in holds 103 people. That was the number. And you couldn't even get them. So specific.
Yeah.
And that room was full, and the people were down the bar, and they were coming out the front. And the guy who runs it actually came down. He lives in the place and came down and said to the person who invited me, I want to meet this guy because of the insane crowd.
Yeah.
It was all hype. It was all social media.
Yeah.
And he came down and he asked me to say a few words, and I didn't know what to say, and I wasn't prepared, and I said blah, blah, blah. And when they had left, I had sold a major chunk of books. Mm-hmm. I had pre-sold, and I said, okay, so this is the move. I'm standing on a soapbox in Times Square yelling, but because we have common interests, Lee Friedlander, Robert, and I went for photographers I liked, that I thought people would connect to me in some weird way.
Yeah.
They'll listen. I don't know. It seems absurd to me every time I do it because it's really like me sitting around and something annoys me or something interests me. I just say it on there. I'm a really bad Facebooker. I don't look at other people's stuff. I don't spend much time on Facebook. I just go right on it when I think of something. And then I'm like the dick that my friends go, did you see what I put up? I go, no. And they go, you never, but I never go on Facebook. I don't want to say I don't have time.
No, of course.
But I'm not a scroller of Facebook. So it's kind of funny that I use it all the time and I'm not really good at it. You know, I just had to learn how to put pictures up on it. They make that pretty intuitive and user friendly. So I can actually put pictures.
You work for CBS Outdoor. You're the director of photography there.
Yes, I was for 25 years. And then we spun off to a new company. We're the same company. We're just, under a different ownership. I've been through so many companies there,
Yeah.
CBS, Viacom, everything. It's
Yeah.
the same deal. So that's my normal gig where I get insurance and
Right.
benefits and all that stuff. And I have a group of photographers around the country I work with.
Mm.
And, I give them assignments. It's a great gig. And they're great. And they're
Yeah.
nice to me. And.
Did you start out as director of photography there, or?
No, I was a photographer.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like one of their staff photographers, and I worked my way up. And I got promoted through all my diligence. No, I don't know. I mean, I got promoted to director like a long time ago, like over
Right.
10 years ago.
Well,
15 years.
what was the switch like going from like being out in the field, so to speak, to like being?
Oh, no, I
What?
still shoot. I
Oh, you
assign
do?
myself stuff. Yeah, I'd rather
Okay.
shoot.
Yeah.
I assign myself a whole region because, look, at the end of the day, this is the way the world works.
Sure.
You either work for somebody or you work for yourself.
Right.
Even though I'm that autonomous, by being the director, I'm sort of in charge of everybody.
Yeah.
And photographers tend to be a little, out there.
Yeah. Of
So
course.
I have this sort of hybrid personality a little bit
Mhm.
where I can sort of work in a corporate world and also work with photographers. So that's sort of the deal. But I still shoot.
Right.
I like to shoot. I prefer to shoot.
Well, I think most would prefer to shoot. And
Yeah. I think
when
so, yeah.
when did you, in the course of your 35 years, when did you start like
I want to do this again.
whatever you like?
This is me in 25 years.
me.
No, go ahead. What?
When did you start
25,
giving workshops? When did you start like educating? Like,
All right. So after my first book came out,
Mhm.
people started contacting me.
yeah.
It didn't really cross my mind that anybody would care what I had to say
Mhm.
in a weird way, right? I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
of
do you ever
course.
think of yourself as everything's obvious to me, but I assume
Right.
it's obvious to everybody. I don't know. And then after my first book, people approached me a little bit, and then I just started doing it one on one. And the workshops is really other people inviting me. Like
Mhm.
I'll do it myself too,
Right.
but I like to keep that to a minimum. Rather spend time with my kids or out shooting.
Yeah, of course.
So I have this, you have to balance everything. But like I just did the Chicago Filter Photo Festival,
Hmm.
the filter, and that was fun. I did a couple of workshops, and I got this. Did I speak? No, I didn't speak. I just did the workshops, and
Mm.
I did some reviewing of portfolios. I kind of have this thing. I'm like obsessed with photographers and photography.
I've
I just
noticed.
love it. I know, but it's like it's weird because I'm so lucky now at this point that I get invited and asked to do things
Right.
because now I don't just get to look at books. I get to meet the people.
Right.
Like I get to meet all these like photographers. I'm at a point now almost where if I see a photographer's work is great and I email them say let's get coffee and hang out, it's like I didn't have that option at 20.
Right.
Like that's the coolest thing. I get to hang out with people. I'll say Jason again.
Yeah.
Jason and I met because he came to one of my book signings, and like to me, Jason's one of the best photographers in the world.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, and I can just call him up and say, "Dude, let's get food." Like
Right.
that's like such a privilege at this point.
Yeah.
But then it gets past that, and you just become friends, and it's normal.
Right.
But still, to share ideas or just talk about the stuff we're doing at
Yeah.
that level with all these people, and I've got friends like that everywhere, and it's the best thing. So workshops are sort of it's a chicken and it's the chicken and the egg. I don't know
Right.
which,
Kind
but
of.
yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
And in doing these workshops and in connecting with all these people, how have they? I mean, if there's like something you can distill it to, how have they influenced you?
Well, it's interesting. Almost everybody I know who's in this field
Mhm.
does something different than I do
Right.
because nobody really does the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
one person shoots this kind of thing and does books and teaches at a university. Another person does assignments. And so I don't really do anything that anybody's done. I guess if you really want to distill it down to the bottom most common denominator,
Yeah.
I think
Unless
we
you got a
all
handful
love
of things.
photographs
Yes.
in a sort of weird way
Mm.
and the compulsion to keep doing it. It's nice that everybody feels like that.
Yeah.
And I really love when I meet young people who are great, like Amy's classic.
Yeah.
She's like a child, or my friend Paris Vizone.
Yes.
Did you interview Paris?
Not yet. I want to though.
All right, tell her I said she has to.
Okay.
But like Paris is she's like embedded with musicians,
Yeah.
traveling the world, living her fantasy. Like she
Yeah.
had Fred Durst posters on her wall when she's a kid, and
Now she's hanging out
touring
with
them.
Right. Yeah.
So that we all got to sort of get this dream come true is really, there is something that's connected. I don't know, like you learn. I have learned specific things, but random stuff. But pretty much
Sure.
everybody does their own thing, and it's sort of cool. I'm really impressed when I meet a photographer who makes a living being a photographer because it's so hard.
Yeah.
So I'm always impressed by. I mean, it's really fucking
Yeah, it
hard.
is hard.
But I love meeting them, and it's not always who's the best photographer.
No, of course not.
You could be a great photographer and an asshole, and nobody wants to know you.
Right.
You can also be an okay or a competent photographer, and if you get the job done, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to be a photographer. I think I tend to go towards the ones who become friends with the ones who shoot pictures because they care about them and do the other thing for money.
Right.
That's sort of, I think that's the people I end up hanging with.
Yeah.
Did I distill it down to anything?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll say you did.
Yeah.
And another one of the things that has kind of been with you since the beginning is a love for photo books.
Love photo books. Got tons of them.
And I'm sure. And now you're a publisher of photo books.
Now I'm a publisher. You want to hear the story about that deal?
I was going to ask you in a question or two, but we could go there now.
No, ask me. I'm not in a rush.
How did that all? I mean, was it
Keep
just
looking at my watch? No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Was it?
No, I'm not.
Was it that you just like picked up a photo book one day and said, "This is
in
great."
the beginning?
Well, how did it get started? And then we'll move to like Peanut Press Books, your publishing.
Okay, so the first book I remember buying that's a photo book is called The Grotesque in Photography. And Alan Coleman, A.D. Coleman, is a critic who put the book out. And it's kind of funny now because I've worked with him at like, photo events and everything.
Right.
And I got to talk to him. And it's just so weird. Like A.D. Coleman, who was like a name on a book, is somebody I actually talked to. Right. But anyway, he put out that book, The Grotesque in Photography. And that's where I saw Les Crims and, a whole bunch of photographers. And I remember thinking, this is cool. Like there's other books like this.
Yeah.
And there used to be a place in Soho called A Photographer's Place. It was a bookstore. Yeah, and I think it might even close before you were born. And all the everybody over 40 from the city knows this. And they would have the damaged books. And you'd find, and I just buy them.
Right.
I met Dwayne Michaels in that place. I would bump into people. Like I was looking. This is actually true. I was looking at Dwayne Michaels' book, and somebody from the side of me goes, "He's pretty good, huh?" And it was him. and he used to be an art director, so he dealt with the other side. And I was like, yeah, it was like cool. I mean, that was cool shit back then.
Yeah.
And then I did this other thing where I started buying the books and then contacting the photographers to sign them. And Irving Penn was like super nice, invited me up to the studio to sign like all these books.
Yeah.
So it just became this thing, and I didn't really know I could afford photographs yet, and maybe I couldn't.
You mean to buy prints or
to buy actual prints?
Yeah,
so I was buying books in lieu of that.
Yeah.
And like Lizette Modell was one of my teachers,
right?
And she's pretty famous, and she had a book out, and I bought that book. So it started becoming like, oh my god, you have a book out, like, and I'd find it. I still love that. Like when I have friends with books, we send them to each other and stuff. It's fun.
Is there a space like a photographer's place currently in New York, or?
Well, the Strand has the photo book section.
Well, right, but I'm saying like a photography bookstore.
No, not that I know of. I was in a place called Arcana Books in L.A., and they had a lot of photo stuff. But I think the internet killed a lot of that. I had friends who were private book dealers. I also bought stuff from them. And I think the internet, I've been told by a lot of them, the internet destroyed the photo book dealers industry because everybody thinks their books are worth a fortune, or they know it is. And nobody's getting deals anymore, and it's harder to find books. But I think the internet did that. But I mean, to be honest, I don't really buy books as much as I used to because I have no room. And a lot of people send me books, like my friends, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But, it's just I got no place to put them.
Yeah.
My house is full.
Yeah. And what do you think has led to, like I've seen in some places, even with photographers who currently have books out, there's like a crazy valuation, like on eBay and Amazon. Like books will be resold for like hundreds or thousands of dollars, and
it doesn't make. I was with Ken. Ken Schless.
Ken Schless, right? Yeah.
I was with him yesterday. We were eating. He gave a talk. So him and
at Photo Plus.
At Sally Davies was there. Seen Sally Davies' work?
Yes, it's lovely.
She's great. Talk to her.
I want to.
But anyway, Ken and I were talking about it. He showed me on his phone like $4,000 for Invisible City.
Right. And
it's pounds. No, euros. 4,000 euros. And he's like,
God.
what the fuck? I mean, it's a scam. It's other people. I don't really understand how that works. I think they're setting it up for the future.
Yeah.
Because nobody's paying 4,000, By the way, I have like 20 copies of Invisible City. I have more Wonderlands than anybody else except maybe Jason.
How many Wonderlands do you have?
I have 2. I only want to say. I get them for my kids. I get a bunch for myself. And I would, I often do that and then give them out as gifts. But I don't really like anyone enough to give them a Wonderland. No, I'm kidding.
It's the only book I keep in the plastic sleeve.
The day we were hanging out, did you get it from him that day?
That's the day I met him and you were there.
Oh, okay. Right. But I wasn't sure if you. Yeah, that's what it was.
He handed me the book. It had Wonderland and the Americans list.
I don't understand that thing about the pricing.
Yeah.
My book's never expensive. It's like people will write to me and say, "Found your book for $40." I'm like, awesome. When I was just in Chicago, a few people asked me to sign books because they get them in the store.
Yeah.
The rarest version of my book is an unsigned one.
Huh.
Because I sign everything that goes to every store, like photo. They all ask you to sign them, so they're all signed.
Yeah. Are your books? Are they all like technically sold out? Are they on the used circuit? Like what's?
I don't really know. I mean, I know people get them used. I have copies of all of my books, and they're not for sale because I don't have a lot left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the first book, well, not a lot. I have some in a box. I have a box of the one that was the plastic box called "This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things."
Right.
I don't have many of those. Those sold too quickly. I fucked up. It's kind of like what happened with the Darth Vader, which we'll talk about.
Right.
I sold that book and wasn't really paying attention to how much I was selling them. I learned a lesson because I did a limited edition of it. I think I did 251 or something like that. I thought it'd take a few months, and I fucked up. I sold like 230 of them right away.
Jesus.
And wasn't really. Yeah, it's weird. Well, it's social media.
Yeah,
CRB, Cafe Royal Books puts out those paperbacks that I've done.
Right.
And they do 250, I think, of each one. And they sell it literally within like 24 hours.
Jeez.
Because people, so you better hold on to you have to really pay attention.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think you'd have to because, like, who am I? I'm like, nobody.
Right.
And I guess 300 books is not a lot. But when it happens in 2 or 3 days and you're not paying attention, you run out of shit. So that's a problem. And I like the idea of a limited edition too.
Why?
You know, I like it because I like when books sell out because then it becomes sort of cooler. Like everybody wants a copy of Wonderland or Ken's Invisible City. Nobody even saw that book. I got that years ago because one of the book dealers I always would buy from said, "There's a new book. You need this." Yeah. Literally. And then I got Ken to sign it, and he's like, "Wow, you actually have one." Yeah. But yeah.
And so, moving to within the past year, you and Ashley Stoll, who you mentioned before, started Peanut Press Books.
So I'm going to tell the real story.
Tell me the real story.
Okay. I don't remember what she said, although I watched it. So we worked together for a while, and she was photographing skateboarders in Cuba and in California and doing sort of interesting stuff and actually doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And then she showed me the Darth Vader pictures, and they started building up. And she only had maybe 20 good ones. And I said, this is like pretty cool shit. Like, this is unique and it's personal. And that whole thing about why we take pictures. Right. Anyway, so I don't know, about a year ago, we said, let's make a book of this. Yeah. And my first thought would, go to a publisher. Right. And I know these publishers. I've been judging photo books for, a decade at Photo Annual, the PDN. Yeah. So I go in a room with 500 books, and I was, not just me, there'd be like 7 of us.
Sure.
And we would decide, what worked and what didn't. And I often would fight with other judges saying, who cares if the pictures are, the pictures are good, great, but that's photography. This book sucks. I can't open it. It flips over. The pages are too thick, so they stick up. They have all these flaws. Yeah. And to the credit, Anna Dixon, who was the photo director at Huffington Post and at the Wall Street Journal now, I was with her one day, and she was agreeing with me. She's like, yeah, it's about the book. And, of course, we're friends now because she's smart.
Good.
But anyway, and other people were saying, well, if the pictures are great. And anyway, and I guess I care about books. So, Ashley, I said, let's make a book. This particular publisher does a good job. And her immediate response was, this is personal. You've made a bunch of books. And I do edit books for other people.
Sure.
She goes, why don't we just do this? You do it with me. And she has a history in design and stuff. Right. So I was going to bring in one of my designers, but she wanted to do it. And the next thing you know, 6 months into it, we're going to press. We're using Meridian's, the best printer I think there is. Friedlander uses them. They have a library there of books where you could just go, oh my God, can I steal these, please? Right. I got a Kudelka book from him that I'd never seen before. It was made for Pace McGill for some show. Probably shouldn't even be saying this, but I asked for one, and he goes, okay. And as soon as he walked out, Ashley goes, I want one. And anyway, I'm like, so ask him. Anyway, and then Joe, who's my guy holding the fish, his pre-press history, he's got 30 years more doing pre-press for all these super high-end catalogs. Right. I'm not going to say any names because he says not to, but all this stuff that costs a lot.
Got it.
When they send you those catalogs in the mail and you go, why did they spend so much this time? I can't afford anything in here. Yeah. He makes those catalogs.
Really?
So he did our pre-press. He's done pre-press for me before. I'm taking my beverage.
Understandably.
Anyway, so we got together and we made the book. And in the process, she was digging it so much. She said, let's start doing this for other people. And I said, well, I've been asked to do this before. but it never works out. They want this thing, I want. And it turned out our sensibilities, actually, Joe, too, we all had the same belief system, whereas I want the book to be great. Sure, we want to make money on it. But if the book isn't great, you're going to be holding this piece of shit for the next 20 years going, ugh. I want my book to be great first, and we'll worry about the money later. I mean, honestly, if you spend another $3 or $4 grand on a book to make it better, in 10 years, you won't know the $3 or $4 grand, but you know that book.
Yeah, of course.
I say 10 years, because I used to be poor. In reality, in 6 months, I won't give a shit.
Right.
I may not give a shit at the moment.
Right.
I want it to look right.
Yeah, of course.
One of my books, All My Lies Is True, is all white. And I remember the production manager said, this end paper is great. And I said, I don't like the color of it. I said, I want a gray like this. And I showed him. He goes, it's going to be another $650. I'm like, I don't care. It's going to look better. And I remember him saying to me like 3 months later, he goes, you're right. It really looks better in this gray. And that's the stuff where that's where you have to make decisions. So anyway, we made the book. She wanted to do it. And so really, people starting to say like, oh, you made this great book, Darth Vader. I didn't make a book.
Yeah.
We made a book, all three of us together, and me and Ashley are Peanut Press.
Right.
Like we're equal status. We have our own opinions.
Sure.
And they're similar, but they're dissimilar enough that it's probably good.
Right.
So so it's the two of us. And so we made Darth Vader, and I don't know, you spoke to her how long ago?
Last, like a week and a half ago.
How was the book doing?
She'd been sending them out that week.
So what happened was Huffington Post, Vice, Lens Scratch, and Feature Shoot wrote about her in like a 3-day period.
Yeah.
And it exploded. Right. And suddenly you're looking online, it's in 20 different languages. I come back from LA at her book party. Yeah. And on Monday we talk. I said, you see what's going on? You should check the website. Yeah. Because we're about to send books to ICP. All these places. Yeah. Photo Eye. And she texts me back, there's 29 copies left. I said, stop. Jesus. Right. It fucking went viral, which is awesome, but it screwed up some of our plans of how we were going to place it. Right. Now, obviously, I'm not an idiot. I'm going to put books aside. Yeah. But when I wrote on Facebook, you better buy it now. There's 29 left. By the next morning, there were 11. And I said to her, you know what? When you sell these 11, it's sold out, and we'll deal with the rest later. Yeah. So now the regular edition is pretty much sold out. We have the limited edition. I don't know how many she sold. That's with a print. You get it's a bargain in my book. The prints are made by Chuck Kelton. They're silver prints signed. Right. I mean, it's a bargain. It's a giveaway. But and that's where we stand right now. We're going to debate how we're going to deal with it going forward. Yeah. But that was a really nice surprise that all these people were interested.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's lovely. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but the images at least.
You can get a copy?
I know. It's waiting for me at home in New York.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I had it's going to be my Christmas gift to me.
Oh, sweet.
So what was the original print run of the book?
Well, we're going to do 500, 100 limited edition, but in printing, and this is probably something people don't talk about, but when you're done doing your edition, if you have extra paper, you can say to the house that's printing, I said, how much good paper do we have left? Can we make another 5, 10, 25, 50 books? And we ended up making more. I don't know the exact number, but those are giveaways. And what we end up doing that is probably send it to curators and stuff like that. I don't know the exact number, but yeah. And honestly, I know people in photo bookstores, buyers, and over the years, most photo books don't sell more than 30, 50 copies, maybe 70.
Really?
They do not sell. You happen to know like people who've sold their books out. Yeah. Know of them, but most of those books, those piles of books you see all over the place, they don't sell a lot of books. Huh. It's sort of surprising. So I built up in my mind, if we sell 100 copies, we'll be thrilled. Yeah. And then this happens, which is awesome. Good problem, right?
No, definitely. Is it a lack of interest, do you think, that, what is it that just has these piles of photo books in bookstores that don't sell?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think most of it sucks. Most photo books are shit. I mean, most photographers suck. It's like anything else. 99%, listen, there's always that line, 10% is great, 10% is awful, and everything's in the middle.
Yeah.
I'd say in photography, a lot of books get published because they can be, not because they should be.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to say names, but... And then the other thing is you have to have a hybrid twist. I think Ashley's book crossed over into how people think. It's a kid who has a vision problem wearing a helmet and he's 7. Yeah. But that's interesting to everybody. It's not just a photographer thing.
No, of course.
But if I see another book of like shit in the woods that's not moving, that's color shot 4x5, I don't fucking care. There's all these, and there's great versions of that. Like Elliot Dudek does a great version of that.
Yeah.
And then there's the other 87 people who see his book and go, I'm as good as him. I'm going to go spend $35,000 and make a shitty book. And I
Right.
really think that's it. You know, I don't know if that's arrogance, but I don't think there's one photographer out there who knows anything about photography. He'll say, yeah, most photography books are good.
Yeah.
They're not. So that would be one reason,
Yeah.
you know.
Something I ask photographers in the course of all these interviews, and it's kind of tailored to the photographer's experience, but because you've done like almost all there is to do in terms of photography. What is one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's looking to get into photography?
Well, I would say why. And then whatever their answer is, I'd base it on that. But I would say that I know you're not looking for that answer.
Eh,
The answer is this. If you're taking pictures, take pictures and go out and do everything you're doing as if you'll never make a penny. Because you probably won't. And then find something else, a way to support yourself. And if somehow you could do both, I know people don't like to hear this. I mean, the truth is, it's really not a good chance you're going to make much money as a photographer.
right.
So do it because you were going to do it anyway. You know, it's the same thing you'd say to a musician. Play the music you want to hear. Take the pictures you want to see. Do
Right.
what you want. Trust yourself. Actually, I'll tell you a quick story if we're not out of time.
No, we're not. We're
This is
good.
my new spiel I do now when I speak to people. And it has to do with my oldest son who's in college. So he has this first paper due. And he can't get it started. And it's a comedy, Greek comedy class. And they're comparing it to a Bugs Bunny cartoon, which he knows and I know.
Yeah, of course.
It's called Bugs and Mugs. And it's the gangster one. He's like, hey, Clancy,
Yeah.
take the boys. It's around the house. I know the fucking thing verbatim. And he goes to me, I can't start this paper. And as we're talking, I said, I know why you can't start this. You're trying to sound really smart. And he kind of pauses. I go, you want every line to be brilliant and like profound.
Yeah.
He's like, well, no, but yeah, I know what you mean. I said, just write what is obvious to you. He goes, what? And I said, listen, you've been vetted. You're in this school of higher learning.
Right.
They know you're smart. You don't have to prove it every minute. Say the thing that's obvious to you. And hopefully your whole life, if what you say is obvious and people relate to it, then there's your thing. And I would say that about photography. Shoot what you want to shoot. Shoot what is obvious to you.
Yeah.
And if you have an opinion and if you're interesting, then you'll be happy.
Right.
And if other people are interested too, then that's just extra. So that's the thing. Just do the obvious thing to you. Do what you would do anyway.
Right.
If you're coming in this going, I want to be a famous fashion photographer, like I said earlier, there's no famous photographers.
Right.
You know, it's just not going to be the way it works. Go be a celebrity somewhere else. In the photo world, you're not a celebrity.
Right.
So that's it. That's my advice is take pictures because you're going to do it anyway.
Excellent. Well, fantastic. Thanks so much for watching. This has been ISO 400. If you'd like to see more of David's work, you can go to his website, davidcarroll.com. And if you like what we do, please hit subscribe down below and share this with your friends. Thanks so much and see you next time.